Welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. In this episode, Keefe and Andreas Wieman dig into a powerful example of AI done right. Inspired by a recent Reuters article by Kenrick Cai, they explore how Verizon leveraged Google's Gemini AI to empower 28,000 service agents, cutting call times and driving a 40% sales boost without removing the human from the loop. It's a case study in practical AI adoption and a preview of what's to come in two new books, SDSS CRM and SDSS Data Analytics. These upcoming releases will offer a deeper dive into aligning people, processes, and platforms for smarter, more sustainable business growth. If you're wondering how to bring AI into your organization without the hype or the headaches, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Keefe, and I'm here with my co-conspirator, sometimes cellmate, Mr. Andreas Wieman, and we're here today to talk about what, sir?
All right. So, you just said my last name is Wyman instead of Lehman, so that's kind of odd.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
early.
After the, I don't know, few hundreds of these we've done it, that's a great tee up for our subject and figuring out how do you introduce AI in a more practical way that augments humans. I think we've seen a lot of examples where companies are trying to go all AI without the consideration for the human need to make AI successful, right? But here's a really good article by Kenrick Cai that is from Reuters, and we'll link to it in our description below. But it's Verizon says Google AI for customer service agents has led to sales jump. It's a really good article, and I think Kenrick did a really good job of hitting on kind of specific elements of, highlighting what Verizon did and the steps that they took. And I think this is the really important piece. What are the steps that were taken to have this successful outcome? At least, from their lens, they feel like it's successful and they're going to continue to invest and proceed. What did they do? And then what was the outcome that they observed that got them excited that further investment was critical and going to be continued? So, Tim, what do you think about
Well,
that
first,
article?
apologize. It was a long travel week, and so I apologize for mispronouncing a name that I know very well, Mr. Wieman. So I apologize. With regard to the article, I think it's fascinating because I've been doing this for a long time, almost 30 years in the contact center space. And we talked for decades about accuracy and access to the knowledge base that agents had available to them to support customers. And there've been many tools, many tools, but built. A lot of them were using conditional logic and drop-down menus to help build a list of most likely articles that would support the agent in answering a customer's question. The challenge with that was often the knowledge-based articles were either inappropriately written for the use. In other words, they were very good academic articles about whatever with multiple hyperlinks for reference in them, but not something an agent who's got maybe a second to 2 seconds to read the article, absorb the contents of it, and repeat it back to the customer with confidence so that the customer can go, okay, I understand, or that's the answer, and oh, this is what I need to do. Rather, you had these knowledge, sometimes you might have multiple articles that were about the same topic. Some were dated and hadn't been culled out of the database and therefore were creating confusion. It was very common when I was doing consulting to walk into a contact center and see inside of cubicles or the pods covered with Post-it notes, which was the immediate indication that whatever technology was being used in the center wasn't getting it done. So what were they doing? Agents were taking what they thought was the best article, and then they stopped searching anymore. So anybody who's making changes in the database or the knowledge base and thinking that would then populate down through the point of interaction was wrong, because that point of interaction had been broken. So what I liked about this, and first off, it's not about, oh, we're going to replace all our contact center space with AI. I think it's a much more human approach that still leaves the human being in the loop to talk to the customer. Second, it's not about resolving the customer's issue with AI. Not at all. It was like, how can I allow the contact center agent to work more effectively in my real goal, which the real goal for the contact center agent shifted a little bit from being, I'm here to get this person off the phone so I can talk to the next person that's in queue who also has an issue. No, it's, I have a customer on my, that I'm engaged with. Okay, in any business that I've ever been involved in, if I can have a conversation with a customer, that should always be, in my mind, about expanding or continuing our relationship. Whether you're at a consulting level where you're talking about deals hopefully worth hundreds of thousands or if not millions of dollars, or whether I'm in a contact center and I'm dealing with a customer who's talking about the renewal of their monthly service. I need to make them feel that we've got their problem addressed. And while I'm there, are there other products and services that would be appropriate to them? And this is the second part, is where the human being really fits in, right? But if I can enable the human being to get to that sell and upsell faster, wow, that's really cool. And if I can do that in a way where I'm confident the information I gave the customer to address the reason why they called is accurate 100% of the time, then I've won on both things. Anyway, sorry, obviously passionate about this. It's been a bane of my existence in the contact center space for 30 years, and finally happy to see some tools that are coming in that can address this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And here's a piece from the article, and I kind of want to put an emphasis on this. And Tim, it kind of piggybacks on your comment here. So Verizon's new internal software was created by feeding nearly 15,000 internal documents into a version of Google's flagship Gemini LLM. And so what that means is they had 15,000 internal documents, SOP, standard operating procedures, product process guidelines, et cetera. That's what they trained the Gemini model on. And then they obviously converged it into Gemini's LLM itself. But then they had what I would maybe describe as a ring-fenced portion of it being these 15,000 internal documents that Verizon supplied. And so what they're doing is training Gemini, training that model, that AI model, to say, okay, here's everything that we do. Here's all of the logistics around it that my agents, my sales agents face. And so make a determination based off of what you're hearing and what you're seeing on the interaction real time with the agent, with the customer, and put the right suggestion that's the right fit for this customer. And that's where also in the article they quote since launch, they've seen an increase of sales of about 40%. And now I believe they said they launched this in January. So those are pretty good numbers, but it gives you a pretty good blueprint of the process that it took. But if you think about what Tim just said, most companies don't have the ability to feed, or what we would call hygienically feed, 15,000 internal documents, because most of their knowledge management systems, which basically is the database for where you keep everything to understand what you have to do in certain situations. What are you supposed to do? No one relies on memorization. If you rely on memorization and you're, multinational company like a big company like Verizon with, millions of customers, you can't rely on memorization because it's gonna
God,
fail you, right?
it's just way too complex an environment. And to your point, that was also one of the things we always used to, pound on the poor agents was always check the knowledge base, because
Right.
yesterday's policy may not be today's policy, or
Mhm.
price or whatever. And that's the big risk that companies, used to struggle with. So I'm really, I'm kind of, one, I think about this in a couple of different ways, but I just think about, they've taken this huge workforce that is traditionally viewed as a cost center, right? That, it's just, oh my God, I have this big, massive labor charges and technology charges that I just have to have because people have issues or problems. And if I want to keep them as customers, I have to be there to respond. Okay. And you can't make them wait 15 minutes to get help. Like, I think you just saw an article on HP last week that was their new internal policy. Oh, okay. That's a good way to get them to go and look things up on their own. Oh, wait a minute, or go to another vendor.
Yeah.
um, but what I liked about this was, now I have this group of human beings that actually wanna help customers, who are now put in a position where they can do both help, and now they're also selling. And now guess what? This cost center is now a profit center.
Yeah.
That's a pretty massive transition for one of a huge cost element within a company the size of Verizon. And, uh, and I would think there'd be a lot of high-fiving going on around that, because now I've turned this, what we just said, I've turned this huge cost thing into, now I've got however many tens of thousands of salespeople. that were already in-house. It cost me nothing. Well, it cost me what it took to give them the right tools to be successful.
Right. And get them excited about it. And I know that that's a big key, is getting the engagement from the employees, the person you're asking the behavior from. How do you get them to give you that volunteer effort that we always talk about? And I think this is a great way to say and get people excited about, hey, look, AI, if you want to think it's this big, scary Terminator, person, it's could it be? Maybe, I guess, but it's not. If you look at AI, it's just another technology. It's just another tool. How can you augment what is already going on in your business without introducing a high level of risk with a low reward? How can you minimize the risk that's introduced to get a bigger gain based off of the investment that you're making? And I think this is what Verizon did. They took a very practical approach and said, yeah, we've got the numbers in here somewhere. I think it was like 37,000 agents. We want to make it easier for these 37,000 agents. And the mobile CEO, Sampath, even made it a point to say, I don't think replacing humans is the way. I think it's augmenting them. Not the exact quote, but it's in the article. And I think that's the way more companies need to look at it. And now here's what I would leave you with in this. Two things. One, make sure that you're thinking about, how can I introduce AI in a minimally intrusive but more kind of comforting way, an acceptable way, wherever I'm introducing it, whether it's at your frontline agents in this case, whether it's your retail sales associates in your brick and mortar stores, et cetera. Find a way. AI is not big and scary. It's just another tool. It all depends on how you use it. Find a way to use it practically so people start using it, you have high adoption, and they start getting more comfortable with it. The second piece is also looking at the data now that is moving across, let's say, Verizon's platform, in this example with the article. All of that data and all of that sales data, if I'm a CMO who probably knows nothing about process and procedure at that level of granularity, I now have a data repository to query against or prompt against via Gemini, with assuming they're all on Google's Workspace. In fact, I know Verizon uses Google's Workspace. Now I can use Gemini to go in and query, hey, what was the biggest item that I sold during this time frame? And it can go back and look at the historical data and prompt that result to the CMO, to the salesperson, I can get it down to the zip code. Now you've got it's not as easy as just asking. There's a little bit of back end prompt engineering that has to occur to do that. But the important piece is, now that the data is introduced, the process procedure, the LLM has been integrated and augmented with the Verizon process and documents, the data that's in there is so much more valuable and richer, not just to the frontline agents, but to everyone in that organization who decides to make more data-driven decisions.
Well, think about, if I can look at all the transcriptions that occurred, which I can now, right? And say transcriptions of those contacts. To your point, I can look at what sold. And more importantly, probably, what are the rebuttals for the other products and services? Why didn't they sell? Is it price? Is it feature set? Is it whatever? And then in almost real time, be able to adjust those to then do that A/B testing to see what is it going to take for product A to move more effectively to meet the needs of the client base. And to your point, that may be regionalized. It could be a lot of different things. And this is the power that we've always wanted. And in the past, we've, operated on, God forbid, gut instinct or anecdotal data, which to call anecdotal data, that is pretty funny, but that's how businesses ran. Oh my God, for so long. God forbid the CEO had one contact with a customer, right? That issue became the number one thing we had to address.
Exactly. And they're still doing it. So it's not like it's a thing of the past. It's still occurring right now as we speak. Someone somewhere, is making a decision that's on gut, not on data. And I just can't
No,
fathom that.
no, I would never do that. Never. Well, yeah, I would. I can't help myself, but hopefully somebody like you would step in and slap me around little bit and go, okay, can we see the data?
No,
Well, there was one example.
I'm too shy and timid to ever give my boisterous opinion on anything.
Absolutely not. All right. Well, I think, again, to the audience, what we're trying to say here is, this is what Verizon has done, I think, is in a totally appropriate and effective way to bring AI in as part of the technology stack to appropriately support with the outcomes, which the outcome is not implementing AI, right? AI is just a tool set within a technology stack that supports a set of users to deliver an outcome for the business. In this particular case, the outcome was a couple of things. One, to reduce handle time, to enable those agents to take on another task that was equally or of greater value to the company of cross-sell and upsell. And I think that's really important because, again, AI without people, process, data, and technology is not by itself. It's just having a sharp knife sitting on a table. And without that, you don't prepare a dinner with just a sharp knife sitting on a table. You have to have all the other elements to make a meal. So I'll leave it at that. I know everybody's going boomer, but yeah. Our proud sponsor for today's podcast is SDSS CRM. This is a interesting and fascinating tale of the story of a CRM from concept through to deployment, the trials, the tribulations, the highs, the lows, and the storytelling that makes this book fascinating. Additionally, it's filled with all kinds of great tips on things to think about on any technology project that will help you improve the successful outcome of that project. So if you're interested, please look for it. It'll be available in Kindle, and the authors are Dave Trupek and myself, Tim Keefe. Looking forward to hearing about it. Take care.
No, I think it was a really good conversation. Hopefully, it invokes quite a few logical ideation sessions in some of our listeners, and we see more practical implementation of AI. In fact, I think we've got a couple of really exciting campaigns and announcements coming out specifically around how do you practically introduce and enable adoption for AI.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
to share that soon.
And I just spent a week in the Middle East at a investment management conference, and AI was a huge part of the conversation in some very interesting ways. And some of them will be appropriate to future conversations. Looking forward to those. And for our audience, please, if you have the time, hit subscribe. Any comments, and if you're on Spotify or LinkedIn, we'd love to hear from you. What other topics you'd like to do? We are coming up with a couple of things. We'll be doing a virtual event, I think in the end of April.
April 3rd.
No, I'm sorry. It's end of April, right? Yeah. And well, more to come on that. And with that, we'll say goodbye, Mr. Andreas.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to our banter back and forth, and hopefully we take away something valuable. And have a great week.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Keefe with Transform CX and SDSS Global Limited. I'd like to talk to you for a moment about a book that we'll be publishing in the next couple of months that is called SDSS and Data Analytics. This is an amazing storytelling approach to how companies can improve the way they look at data and leverage that data for appropriate business outcomes. Unlike so many data analytics books that are really looking at data scientists, looking at many of the statistical analysis tools that are used within data analytics, that's not this book. This is a book that's really tied to the people in the room that are trying to take advantage of data to drive better business outcomes. If that's of interest to you, look forward to SDSS. Data analytics will be coming out shortly, and would love to get your feedback on it. Will be available on Kindle and through Amazon. This is Tim Keefe, and thanks again for your time and energy.